One of the things that I appreciate about counseling is that every client brings a unique perspective, history, and set of experiences into the counseling relationship. At the same time, I think it's important for counselors to honestly recognize populations that may challenge them so that they can continue developing competence and self awareness. One population that I think might be challenging for me is violent offenders. Individuals who have committed violent offenses, serious violent offenses, um, such as against children or sexual predators. It's not because I think they're undeserving of counseling. They absolutely need counseling. Um, it's because I would need to carefully monitor, as a mother, um, my own reactions. The ACA Code of Ethics requires us to uh, be responsible in providing competent and non judgmental services while avoiding the imposition of our personal values. So I believe I could work effectively with this population, but I would need ongoing supervision, consultation, and a lot of self reflection to remain non judgmental and, to brace myself for some of their truths. So I would have to, so I'm over here looking at this list from our textbook about a balanced approach to VRA. So that's the violence risk assessment. So it says to remember the rules for reducing resistance. The better relationship you have with a client, the better chance that they'll be honest with you. Taking a coercive or potentially punitive stance is likely to generate resistance and dishonesty. Um, Ask direct and indirect questions about violent behavior history. Questions that link past and present are useful. That could be a challenge. So, again, recognizing what my challenges are, having supervision, ongoing supervision, and mentorship on how to navigate, using some clinical interviewing techniques on myself, right, to be prepared for potential outcomes so that I have specific, goals in mind for responding. Um, Potentially, so number 3, it says because potentially violent individuals aren't always honest about their violent history, you may need to interview collateral informants. Um, of course, if you have the release of information signed, or an ethical or legal responsibility um, to protect someone from harm. So listen for details to help identify potential victims. If the details aren't forthcoming, you may need to ask about those details. Identification of a specific victim increases violence risk. So there's a lot to balance, with violent offenders. Listening for specifics about the plan, intent. Um, how do you craft curious, indirect, questioning to further assess specificity, from someone who has predatory, instincts, who is likely not going to tell you about access to, weapons or means for committing, offenses in the future. Uh, so, asking about early violent incidents, they may be very forthcoming and eager to brag. Ultimately, I believe it will be difficult, very difficult for me to remain objective. So this is an area I will absolutely have to work on. I think it's important to be aware of this, to answer this question, because I actually hadn't thought about it previously. In my mind, I was imagining, I suppose, something kind of idealistic, where it's like, oh, well, I'm going to see, VA patients, and they're going to talk about their PTSD or, their anxiety or their depression. And it had not occurred to me until just now, as I'm preparing to make this video, that there are some other populations to consider. So, recognizing my own biases is going to be exceedingly important in this area. I think it's important in general to be aware of all of the heuristics and biases, therein. But in this population, for me specifically, I absolutely have to be cognizant and prepared, very prepared. So a population that I believe may be particularly suitable for distance counseling are adults who are experiencing mild anxiety, depression, stress, adjustment concerns, or life transitions. Telehealth can increase access to care for those clients who have transportation barriers, physical disabilities, caregiving responsibilities, work schedule limitations, or who live in rural areas. The majority of America lives in rural areas. If you live near a city or a large town, it may appear to you as if, the majority of the population lives in those areas, but they don't. About 58% of Americans live in rural areas. So that is the majority. So, and then there's, another percentage who have disabilities and live in cities or have socioeconomic barriers, to transportation, or not able to leave work, so telehealth, would be great for that population. I think ultimately, like, awareness is important for effective counseling, and our textbook, emphasized the importance of recognizing the needs of our clients and being, very client facing, recognizing that everyone's life's not the same, and the suitability of distance counseling and the need for counseling for clients that we may not be comfortable with is still necessary. So it's important to also remember that distance counseling is not a traditional counseling setting, but it is also important to develop competencies in that area because it will benefit, a variety of clients. So I believe experience is one of the greatest teachers, and the more opportunities that I have to practice, telehealth skills or challenging, clients, through site-based learning, practicum, residency, and future professional work, the more comfortable and competent I will become. So technology will continue to change, but the core of counseling skills such as, empathy, active listening, and rapport building, cultural, responsiveness, that will remain the same across modalities. So thank you for watching.